34.
33.
32.
31.
30.
29.
28.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
22.
21.
20.
19.
18.
8.
7. 6. 5.
4.
3.
2.
1.
Hey, Rocky, you want to see me pull a show out of my hat? Nothing up my sleeve. Hi, and welcome to the Mouthwash Talk Show, a minty, fresh take on politics. And we have a guest tonight that you've probably never heard of. I've never heard of. He sort of reached out to us and he was like, hey, I'm a nationally known speaker and he's got a lot of followers, so he must be good. Let's put it this way, way more important than our show. So that's good. And on another side note, I don't know if you ever heard of somebody named Alice Walton, of the heiress of the Walton fortune. She started following the show. I'm thinking, yeah, it's not that Alice Walton. Au contraire, it is Alice Walton. So maybe, Alice, if you're watching tonight, that's cool. That's cool. Maybe we could have you come on, talk about your medical. You're really working on free medical and different things for people. Maybe we can get you on the show for that. But tonight, we got a good one. This is going to be interesting to see a motivational guy. I was looking at some of his bio and some of his Instagram stuff, and he's got a good story, and I've seen he's got a really cool looking blue suit that I need to get one of. But I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Oh, let's do a little housekeeping on what's going on. Thursday, if you want to watch Channel 40, we actually have the Community Wellness Show on with KG, and we actually talked to the Children's Museum people, and then Amora Scott, who is Moselle Sanders, one of the fundraisers for that. We did a show for that. And then the Moselle Sanders telethon is coming on. And I have a little preview here, which I'm going to play this real quick. It's about 10 or 15, so you can watch that. And guess what? I talked them into streaming. I said, if a guy like me can do live streaming, then Channel 40, by gosh, you can do it. So you could do this live streaming. So they're going to live stream it. I don't know where yet, but they're going to live stream it. And I've yet to see one of our shows because I don't have an antenna. So one of these days I'll get an antenna, maybe for Christmas. Maybe for Christmas, Lisa will get me an antenna. So I'm going to play this little clip here, and you'll briefly for a second see me in there because I'm one of the MCs for the thing, and it was sort of fun doing it. So here you go, and then we'll have Chris on the other side. We'll get to know him a little bit.
We need you to step up to the plate and give during the 4th Annual Moselle Sanders Thanksgiving Telethon, Thanksgiving Day, 2 to 5 p.m., with music from Bashiri Assad, Brian Thompson, and more, plus fun and fundraising to feed the hungry. The Moselle Sanders Telethon, Thanksgiving Day, 2 to 5 p.m. on TV 40.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me do the Moselle Shuffle like very much on the TV, but I had the white man's overbite there going. So Chris Widener, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. I just have to ask, how in the heck did you find us?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I do a lot of interviews. I've done thousands of podcast interviews and radio, television, and I actually do have people that are looking for podcasts and things to be on. And somebody ran across it and said, I think this would be a great group for you to connect with. So here I am.
Good way to end your career. We've had many career ending. This is where the graveyard of careers. That's what we
I'll tell you, my career sort of ended when I came out of the closet as a conservative. So, it's funny how many times people have called me up and said, oh, we want you to come and speak on your best-selling book, The Art of Influence. Are you available this date? Yeah, I'm available. What's your fee? And I tell them my fee. Great, that's in our budget. We'll send you a contract. Give us a few days. And a few days later, they go, well, I told my board that you were coming in, and Marge had never heard of you before. So she looked you up online, and well, she hates Trump. And so, I can't bring you in because she would make my life miserable for the next year, and literally just completely cancel me because of who I vote for. So it's been an interesting ride, but it is what it is.
It is that. Well, and this is our 147th episode, I believe, and we started out. It was a right, left, center. I had a Democrat, a Republican on, and then we picked up Lucy as a libertarian. But Lucy had an emergency, so we have I don't know if we have Mark Small or Slick Witty in for her, and then we had Tiffany, who's had sort of an emergency. So we got a different panel tonight, but it will be an interesting panel. So Mark Small usually does small talk. I actually had to put him in the game tonight. I felt like Bobby Knight, you're coming in off the bench. You're coming in here. I didn't even have to really yell at him too much. But so we don't have small talk, but that's okay. It'll be an interesting panel. And I was reading on that. Have you written 27 books? Did I hear that right?
Not quite. 25. My
25
book. Actually, my 25th book is the first book I ever wrote. And it is now being turned into the first movie that I've ever done. A Clint Eastwood screenplay guy is writing it. We've already got our director, and so we're moving towards probably a Christmas release of 2024. It's
now. Are you in the movie? Are you a cameo or anything?
I got to be in the movie somehow. I mean, I got to figure it out somehow.
But then it's like you'd be Dirty Harry. That's what do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Yeah, I always wanted to be a movie director like Clint Eastwood someday. Well, that's cool. So when would that be coming out? Is that probably a
hopefully Christmas of 2024? It's a book called The Four Seasons, and it's about a billionaire who finds out he has 1 year left to live. Thus, Four Seasons. And it's really an actor's movie. There's no car chases, no sex scenes, nobody gets shot. It's really about the exactly. I'm out of here. No, but it's really about the meaning of life, and the idea that here's this guy who has $1 billion, and there's nothing that money can do to save him. So he has to figure life out real quick, and finish some relationships, make sure that his family's taken care of, and so we're excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a combination between the Scrooge and Die Hard. Maybe if it's coming out around Christmas, maybe it'll be a Christmas movie like Die Hard. And then
Bruce Willis.
Like be a cult.
We're talks with Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I listened to your some of your Instagram stuff, and you talked about your childhood, single mom, and all that, and getting in trouble. We're kindred spirits. Although I didn't have a single mom, but I did have ADHD, and it did went over. I need to apologize to a lot of my teachers. Now I've harnessed it, so everybody says, "I wish I had your energy." So maybe that's sort of similar to what you had experienced.
Yeah, it's interesting, the old saying, you can get bitter or you can get better. One of the things that I'm really good at is I make connections really quickly. Like, even you and I feel comfortable already. We've been talking 5 minutes, there's rapport, those kinds of things. And people will say, what was it like? I lived in 28 homes and went to 11 different schools. And one of the things that I realized was my proficiency at creating instant rapport with people and making connections. It comes from being literally dropped into a new school like every year and a half. And I suppose there's a lot of kids out there now who grew up in the same situation who don't make good connections very easily. And that's just the difference, I think, between personalities. But that's one of the benefits that came out of a negative circumstance of moving so often.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of kids with the social media are so introverted. Back in the, I think you're similar to my age. I'm not going to insult you by saying you're older or younger than me.
I'm 40. I'm kidding. I'm 57.
57 then. I mean,
okay, I like to tell people I'm 80, but I got a great skin regimen,
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, we have a good rapport going, so I'm going to bring on this crazy panel, and then we'll put you out on the hot seat here. So let's see if I can bring them on here without doing this, without making it too bad. And then we're going to get into this. So let's see. I'm going to bring on our guest. Brad's going to be last. Actually, Brad's been on the show maybe 10 or 12 shows. He's our Democrat, and he's been doing a great job. But he's the veteran tonight. So we're going to have let's have our newest guy. We're going to have Steve Whitmer or Slick Witty come on. Go ahead and unmute there, Steve, and so we can hear you. But
Steve's got to be the conservative. I can tell by the beard and the hat and the Carhartts, it looks like. And
out of this group, you would say yes, he would be that. He is.
You should not be able to tell somebody's political persuasion by the clothes they wear.
I look that good.
Yeah. Well, Steve is he's a legend on Twitter. He is he has probably had more accounts blocked and banned on Twitter than any human walking the face of the earth. He has a style that make people, it gets their attention very quickly. In fact, we have a little story between us. I actually got blamed for being him about with this one gal. So she spreads it to a state senator that I was this threatening person, and the Capitol Police called me.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. I'm like, squeeze me. I did not do such a thing. And so Steve, he chuckles. He's got me in trouble for what he did. And that's how he does it on Twitter. But yeah, Steve's first time panelist tonight. So he's good. Now we're going to bring on Mark Small. He's a veteran of the show. He's usually had small talk, but he has been on. I think you were on with Bill Levin, which Chris, I don't know if you ever had a live TV.
I don't think I was on with Levin. I was on the first couple way back.
Yeah, well, he was on very early, and Mark Small's attorney that represented Bill Levin had the Church of Cannabis here. So we have Bill Levin on the show, and he lights up a joint right there on our show. You know how live TV is; you can't really stop that. And I'm like, okay, well, they didn't shut us down. So, but it was
a cigar.
Good. So, Mark, how you doing tonight?
Hanging in there. Hanging in there.
To ask now, Chris, I'm going to tell you about Mark. Now, he's Republican, but he's so far left that the right can see him coming from the other way. So was that a pretty good explanation there, Mark? Don't call him liberal. So. Do not call him liberal. Yeah. He'll get mad.
No, but that. Can I ask a question now? Are we getting into the conversation?
Not yet. We still got to get Brad back here. You just see, you get these guys that the first time on the show, Chris, it's, but
we're ready for it.
You don't have Lucy. Lucy will give you a dialogue with no question.
Well, here's my problem, John. My problem is I'm looking at Mark and I already like him. And the problem is that he's a moderate Republican, and I'm trying to solve that confliction, right? I like him already, but I don't like him already. So wait till the comments get going. It's funny because he does small talk, and then you'll hear people just giving him crap, and then if I wait in the show, are you going to play small talk? Are you going to play small talk? Oh yeah, he definitely keeps the conversation lively. Let's get Brad on here. Brad, our veteran tonight. How does it feel to be the most senior panelist tonight, Brad?
Oh, that's crazy. I did not know that coming in. I didn't prepare anything. I'm going to have a plaque made, though, probably.
Yeah.
Papa Brad.
I know that. So.
Brad, are you the libertarian? Are you the libertarian today?
Oh, no.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. No, actually, I think Steve is supposed to be the libertarian, but we don't really. Lucy is our staple of, and this is probably the first show she's missed in quite a while. But Brad is our lone Democrat, so he's got thick skin, so you can punch right on him and just I'll probably help you.
I never punch. Small incisions.
I'm glad Mark is going to depress us all in real time. This is going to be fun tonight.
We already
Usually after small talk, I'm like, God, that is correct and awful, and and I don't know what to do with it. It's just
well, you're gonna have a whole thing. So and Mark is chomping at the bit. So I'm gonna get Mark up here. Mark, what question? Well, you start off. You're our guest on the panel tonight. So what do you got? Fire something out there, and it can be anything. I think Chris can
just
take
briefly. Well, see, when I was an undergrad, we had a group called the Thursday Night Supper Club, and we would use Thursday evenings to meet at a bar and get hammered. And everybody knew I was really far left. And this one guy in the club was really far right. And people would say, whatever you do, don't talk to Tad about politics. You guys are going to get pissed off. And they were saying the same thing to him. And you'd have to understand DePauw University. It was a Tuesday morning, about 7:30 in January, and we were sitting across from each other over a keg. And at that point, I said, we're not supposed to, or he did. Our political views turned out to be more closer to each other than the other people in the group, because I was so far left and he was so far right. It overlapped in a lot of ways. My question has to do with civility and being able to talk about things. My blog is Civil Discourse Now. And I talk to people and they won't talk to me about issues because they're not going to acknowledge facts. And how do you get a conversation going and let's say, Chris, you and I are sitting here and you're going, you cannot convince me of whatever fact it is. And I say that's the most critical thing that I can address. And you've got something the same way. How do you bridge that gap?
Well, the first and foremost thing I try to decide is whether or not someone's persuadable, because if they're not, it makes no sense to discuss it, right? So if I'm open-minded, it'll take a lot to convince me, but I am open-minded because I want to believe the truth. I'm ultimately a seeker of the truth. The other thing that I would say is I love people. I like people. I find them interesting. I find their lives interesting. I am a far-right conservative, but I am what I call an honest conservative. I will admit when my side is wrong. I will admit when my side doesn't make sense. I will admit when one of our politicians doesn't do something that I think would be the thing to do, or does something that I don't think that they should do. But ultimately, I'm governed by one of the passages from the Bible that I really like, and it talks about speaking the truth in love. And I like that passage because I find, my opinion is, most people fall into one or two camps. They are either loving, oh, do what you want, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to believe, whatever, you do you, right? With no emphasis on truth. Then you have the other side, which is all truth, right? And they say, and these are the people that say, well, I'm a truth teller. And I say, no, you're an asshole. I mean, really, ultimately, that's what you are, right? So I feel like, and this is my goal as a person who talks a lot of politics, is how do I merge the speaking the truth with the love for the person sitting across from me as a person created by God? And to me, that's what drives civil discourse, is the ability to say, here's what I believe. What do you believe? I will respect you enough to listen. And of course, the overarching principle is it has to be done in good faith. There are people who do not discuss in good faith. I will always discuss in good faith. And I those are the principles that govern me, Mark.
So, Mark, did that?
Okay, and just quick follow-up then.
Yeah.
Just a caveat is I represented folks who tried to get the 2016 election set aside for Russian interference. That was the U.S. Supreme Court, just being open with my cards on the table. When you're sitting there and we're dealing with a time right now in this country, and I know probably every election people are saying this is the most dire time. I've never seen a time like this. I think looking back in history, you'd be hard-pressed to find any parallels unless it would be like the Whig Party and it's falling apart and everything leading up to Civil War. What do you do about when it's so critical? And I'll address you as I'm pretty sure, looking over the materials you've had, you're a religious person, I'm not. The things you believe, we're probably diametrically opposite, but it's important, I think, to engage. How do you do that first step? And is there a recognition? I've got friends that I won't talk politics with.
Me too. Me too. I have many friends I say we're too good of friends. Let's stop talking politics. Well, let me start by saying this, Mark. You said that you defended, or you tried to overturn or set aside the 2016 election. Is that right? Did I hear you right?
Sure did.
All right. Here's my response to that. Good for you. That's what we do in America. You have the right to do that. This is what separates us from Iran and, all these morons who are like, oh, I want to go be a Palestinian, gays for the Palestinians. Okay. Yeah. Go spend a little time over there. I say bravo to you. But do you know what most leftists won't do? If I say, hey, I supported, taking a look at the 2020 election, insurrectionists, we need to put them into prison. Let's eliminate them, as Goldman said the other day. Congressman Goldman, he needs to be eliminated. So here's what I would say. We need to focus on the Constitution. We need to focus on accepting what is okay and what is right. And one of the things that makes America is civil, political discourse, the ability to address your grievances to the government, all of those kinds of things. And in my opinion, I don't think the left is doing that right now. In fact, I got into it with a guy today. He's like, you guys are, trying to overturn look at you, 2016, you did the same thing. Well, it's different. No, it's not different. We're both believe in what we believe, and we're going to try to utilize the venues available to us. So that's what I would say in regard to that. And you know, I want to listen. I want to talk. You're probably very, very smart. You appear to me to be very smart. You're well read. I can tell by all the books behind you. I'd love to hear your opinions. I love intellectualism. I love debate.
Green screen.
It's a green screen.
No, it's not.
You know,
the cat will
John,
come across there in a
say,
minute.
have you written 25 books? And I say, no, that was a misprint. I've read 25 books. But no, I love the discourse as long as it's in good faith and people are really, truly willing to listen. And I am willing to listen.
Yep. So, well, speaking of the other side of what you just said, listen, I can see Slick there undoing his mic. He knew who was coming next because he is that second person you talked about, that truth teller. And he will just like, you better be going like this on the Three Stooges because he's going to be doing that business for you there real quick. So what are you hearing here, Steve? What are you hearing here?
I don't know. I'm hearing civil discourse right now. We're not screaming at each other. I think we're all adults, and I think we can all have a good conversation on whatever the topic is right now. But Chris, I was listening to you on the way home from a meeting, and it got me thinking. When I was running for office, one of the things that I was terrified about was public speaking. And I had to speak in front of, I think it was about 30 or 40 IMPD officers about what my platform was, what my policy was, and I kind of just blacked out. And I even asked the officer afterwards, I'm like, did that go okay? Like, I don't even know what I said. But like you have probably spoken in front of like thousands and thousands of people. So for a rookie speaker, what would you recommend to like, is there a routine that you do, or is there something that you could recommend so people actually?
Yeah, I'll tell you a brief story and then I'll give you a couple of tips. I was speaking, this was a long time ago. You'll know by the story. It was probably mid 90s. And I'd given a speech. I was in Seattle and a guy came up to me after the speech and he said, how in the world do you talk for 30 minutes with no notes? And I said, you could talk for 30 minutes with no notes. And he said, oh, I could never talk for 30 minutes with no notes. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm an engineer at Boeing. And I said, okay, great. What are you working on right now? And he says, I'm actually working on developing the wing for the 777. And I said, great. And I still happen to have the microphone in my hand. I said, if I handed you this microphone right now and I gave you a minute or two to prepare and jot a couple notes down, could you talk for 30 minutes on designing an airplane wing? And he goes, oh, easy. And so here's what I would say. If you know your information, you can do it. So the number one thing I tell people when they say, you know, how do I overcome stage fright and all that kind of stuff? I say, know your information cold. If you're going to give a 30-minute speech, know 2 hours worth of information. I think the second thing that I would say, is to structure your speech, you know, an introduction, 3 points, 4 points, and an exit, you know, and an outro, what they call that kind of thing. And then lastly, what I would say is this, you know, they did a research project, and Seinfeld kind of made the research project famous because he turned it into a joke. The research project found that the number one fear amongst people was public speaking, and the number two fear was death. And Seinfeld says that means the next funeral you go to, most people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. And so what I would say is realize that when you're giving a speech, what makes people fearful when they're giving a speech? It's afraid that the people in the audience are going to think they aren't good. I can tell you, if you are not a professional speaker, nobody cares whether you're any good or not. They're sitting in the room going, better it's that guy than me. Now, if you're a highly paid professional speaker, a member of the Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame, and you've been paid a lot of money to show up, you darn well better be good. But the average, you know, the vice president of the mortgage firm, nobody is sitting there going, I sure thought George would be a better speaker. No, they're like, I'm sure glad it's George up there and not me. So take it a little lighter than what you would think of, but know your stuff, have some structure and some direction, and then just realize nobody's really judging you that much.
Yeah, cool. Real quick before we get to Brad here, see, Brad takes notes and actually prepares for shows, unlike Tiffany.
I mean, I'm just winging this. Like, I do it.
Oh, ringing it. Okay.
I was wondering what that thump thump sound was. It was Tiffany going under the bus.
Yeah. She'll make fun of me in a second, won't she, Brad?
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of the things that so when you first started speaking, I noticed that, when I first started speaking, I would read everything, and I'm an awful reader. Then I went to notes, and then I did learn how to do that. And it was mostly practice. I mean, just a lot of practice and figuring it out. But the knowing the material, I think, is very, very critical, and being able to weave it into a story somewhat helps as well. So, Brad, what do you got there if you're winging it? So I should let you go first.
No, I actually have a story about that. I hated public speaking too, and I had to do a speech class in college. And what I decided to do was I would lie about what the topic was. So, like, I gave a speech about how I was a vegan, and I'm not. And I came up with this story about how, like, I went deer hunting with my uncle, and that, I shot a deer and I ate it, and I felt this like one with nature moment. And I was like, at that moment, I was like, I never want to eat meat again. Everybody fell for it. And I was just sitting there giving this speech like, wow, this is awesome. All right. Like, that was the first time that I was okay giving a speech. I don't know why, but
I think Joe Biden took that exact same speech class. If I just lie my way through 50 years of politics, I fought a guy named Corn Pop.
Yeah. It's like, did it come with a truth stretcher in the kit? That's always good.
That's
good. But yeah. So, I mean, let's see, what would be, Chris, what would be one of your like funniest speaking engagements that the weirdest thing happened, maybe a heckler or maybe something that you had to go speak at that they wanted a weird request, or what would be?
I got invited to speak to a nudist convention once, and they said, you don't have to be naked, but most of the audience will. And I actually knew another professional speaker who was a nudist, and I turned the gig over to him. So he went and gave the naked speech. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I will tell you an interesting story that I think is a great lesson for humanity. I was asked to speak in Cairo, Egypt. I've spoken in Cairo twice. Once was for the International American Chamber of Commerce, and then the other was for a private company, a large European company that had a base in Cairo. And I wrote a book called The Angel Inside. It's my best-selling book. It was #2 on the Wall Street Journal, #7 on the New York Times, #3 on Amazon overall. And it's a fictional story about a young man who spends a half a day in Florence, Italy, and it revolves around a lot about Michelangelo and the creation of the David. So I'm in this room with 400 Egyptian successful, professional, college-educated people. The men were wearing suits, the women were wearing suits, and not full hijabs or anything, but scarves. They had their heads covered. Very polished, intelligent group of people. And while the guy was doing my introduction, there was a section in it about the angel inside, and he stopped reading my introduction, and he started looking at me saying, that sounds like such a fascinating book. I'm going to try and get that book. He kind of does this like off the cuff kind of, that book sounds really fascinating. Then he goes back into the introduction. We finish. I come up, I speak, and about 15 minutes into my speech, I'm about to talk. I'm about to get to a part of the talk, and in pops to my head, this would be an interesting time to bring up The Angel Inside, the book The Angel Inside. So I say to this group of 400 Egyptians, professional, college-educated Egyptians, I say, how many of you have seen the David? And this is what I got. And I said, the David, the statue of David in Florence, Italy, the statue of David. And this is what I got. And all of a sudden it popped into my head. I'm talking about the King of the Jews. I'm talking about David was the King of the Jews. And here I'm asking if a bunch of Muslims have gone and visited the statue in honor of the King of the Jews. Exactly. And I panicked. I immediately, like, it's the only time in my life I felt the blood come out. And I just went, that's really great. Anyway, and I went on like that, right? But here's a profound lesson I learned from that experience. Here is a group of 400 college-educated, intelligent, professional people whose culture and country had kept them from even knowing about arguably the greatest piece of artwork ever done, certainly in the top 3 statues ever created. You've got Venus de Milo, the Thinker, and the David, right? There's not many other statues people can even name, let alone say they might be one of the greatest. And I just thought their culture has kept them from even knowing about the Renaissance, about Catholicism, about art, about Michelangelo, about any of those things. And then I mentioned earlier, I'm a conservative, but I'm an honest conservative. And it made me ask, what don't I know about other cultures? What don't I know about other countries? What don't I know about other ways of doing things and living life? And so while it was the only time in 2,500 speeches that I've actually panicked briefly, it became a really fascinating life lesson for me. And that's the first thing that popped into my head. It's not a funny thing or whatever, but it was a very interesting thing that happened to me.
Yeah, that's well, when you were talking about the nudist thing, it's like one of the things they tell you is to envision the audience in their underwear or something like that. So that
Which
wouldn't really work.
Bad advice, considering most of the audiences I've seen.
Yeah, well, and I've done some stand up, and I'll tell you what's the worst. It is stand up is hard to do because you have an audience there that wants to be funny, and I just tell bad dad jokes and they're mediocre at best, and so it's hard to do. I mean I'll get up and just talk, give sermons, eulogies, weddings, whatever. I can do that fine, but man, the stand up is definitely the hardest thing to do, and you really need to get that act together.
I did.
You got to go out
2 years.
I did. Yeah. So Mark, what do you think? Do you think the stand up?
I did stand up for 2 years.
I think sitting down doing it would be a lot easier.
Sit down comedy. Welcome to our sit down comedy show.
Yeah, it's like everybody needs to sit down. Ooh, tell you, it's like Rodney Dangerfield stuff. But so, Mark, do you have another question that you might want to throw out?
I did stand up for in Chicago. I did stand up for 2 years in Chicago, and that was kind of a grind. And then I went up to argue at the 7th Circuit, and I thought I played tougher rooms than this when I was up here doing comedy, and half the audience was drunk and thought they were funnier than me. And I don't know how many of them on the bench were drunk that day, but but when you're dealing with an audience, and especially stand up, and they're paying good money to have you make them laugh, it's really daunting. And that's now going back to the political thing. And when you're getting up and talking about a specific subject and you've got some tension in the room, you tossed off a comment about Biden, and I respect your opinion on that. Somebody else would say something about indictments, and then we've got a whole thing on doing the confrontation. Then,
do you know who else gets indicted? You know who else gets indicted?
Points right
there. Else gets indicted? All of the opposition party in Cuba, all the opposition party in Russia, they all get indicted. So the fact that you've been indicted,
probably when they do illegal things, that's the only one they get indicted.
Really, the only time anybody ever gets indicted is if they've done something illegal. I got you.
So, Mark, what's the definition of indicted?
Well, no, but I mean, if you look at past administrations,
what's indicted? What's that mean for the people that got Bullwinkle in their background? Because I don't know if I know. I don't have books behind me. If you didn't notice,
that means that you had a grand jury. I know, but you had a grand jury impanel and find that the state had met a standard of proof such to bring the charges against you. But going back over past administrations, if you look at the Nixon administration, Reagan administration, they were racking up convictions there too. And it's something that, and this goes back to the idea of what the Republican Party is. When people are telling me I can't be left wing and be a Republican, and I say, what are you talking about? The Republican Party was founded for abolition of slavery. And it was the party that brought in environmentalism. It brought in trying to stop corporate growth into monopolies, all those things. And the EPA was founded under Nixon's administration. Those are all things that were brought in the Republican administrations.
One of his
biggest
how is
you get to this point?
And Republicans always complain about it.
Yeah, I know. It's like everything's backwards. It's like upside down in the Stranger
You can't
Things.
take credit for it and then complain about it at the same time as a Republican. Like I can't understand that argument.
Here's my only problem with the left-wing Republicans or the moderate or the mainstream, whatever you want to call them. I can remember as a young conservative in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and here's what they said. You have to vote for him. We'll lose if you don't vote for him. You've got to vote for him. And so we held our noses and we voted for the mainstream Republican because I'm a GOP guy. I'm a Republican guy. I'm a team player. As soon as we got our guy, what'd they do? They jumped out ship. They started the Never Trumpers. They started the Lincoln Project. There's no loyalty. There's no loyalty to the party. And the funny thing that I find is that it's the conservatives who are loyal to the party, and we hold our noses and vote for the liberal Republicans. It's the liberal Republicans who won't vote for anybody unless it's an establishment candidate. And in fact, I'm very good friends with our former congressman here, and the difference between me and him is he won't vote for Trump if Trump is the candidate. And I told him I'll vote for whoever the R candidate is. So if Trump somehow, some way doesn't end up being the politician, because we are a two-party country, and whether you like it or not, if you don't like it, let's fix it. But in the meantime, we're a two-party political nation, and I'm going to have a choice, an R or a D. I'm never voting.
Chris, now, Chris, where do you live? You're on
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we're same. No, Chattanooga. Are you on slow time?
Eastern time.
Oh, so you're on the same time. Okay. Yeah, here in Indianapolis, we
call Central slow time.
Yeah, that's slow time. And, you got to talk slower for those people because they're just a little farther behind us. But well, before daylight savings time, my sisters lived down by Cincinnati, and they were in Indiana, but they were on what we called fast time. So I'm usually that's how we figured out. But now we have Evansville and up by Chicago is on slow time in Indiana. So it's like anything. The government makes a rule and the people find a way around it. That's how how government's supposed to work.
Here's the other thing, though, Mark, if you think about it, and again, this is me being an honest conservative. A Republican in Texas or Tennessee looks different than a Republican in Massachusetts or Delaware or Rhode Island or from my home state, Washington State. I'm totally cool with that, because to me, the problem with a lot of politics is it's all or nothing. And it's just not something that can be accomplished with a country of 330 million people. There's not two opinions. There's 330 million opinions, and it's all about finding the best place where we can navigate to make the best for all people. And so I totally get it that there are folks in my party who disagree with me, who are further to the left. And that's cool. We'll argue it out. We'll hash it out. But I expect them to vote for our candidate, and most of them won't if it's not a mainstream candidate.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see if either one of the leading guys in both parties make it to the finish line a year from now, because there's as they say, there's a lot of, we still got the back nine to play, and a lot can go wrong in the back nine and all that. So Slick, what do you think about all that? Do you think that are we going to ever find any discourse between the parties? Because it just seems like we're about ready to kill each other.
Yeah, I think we're about at that point now. I think for some people on the left and some people on the right, it really depends, though. Like, I can talk to a Democrat, a moderate Democrat, no problem. I can talk, but I can't talk to a socialist because they get all wound up, they get all emotional, and then they want to throw me in the gulag because I only believe in two genders.
Well, you call them comrade every time they start doing that, so
it's a friendly term.
Spirals it down.
It's a little friendly, that's all.
Yeah.
But I eventually it's going to pop. I don't know what's going to happen. Next year we're going to be warming up for the governor's race and the president, so we got a couple of things to focus on. But back to Chris. I was thinking about this while you were talking about how many people that you meet. Is there a person that you've met that's really like touched you? It's like they've read your books and then they come up to you after like a motivational speech. Is like, you changed my life.
Yeah, I get those emails a lot. In fact, that book, The Angel Inside, I get it a lot from that book. People that started businesses because of that book, people who went back to college because of that book. This latest book that I wrote called The Four Seasons, about the billionaire who finds out he has a year left to live. I can't tell you, I've had grown men in their 60s worth $1 billion call me up crying. And it has really touched people to think about what life is really about. You know, we all go someday. We all think it's going to be 30 years from now. But when all of a sudden you're confronted with the fact that it's going to be 1 year from now, all of a sudden you have to really come to grips with it. And I've had some really interesting things happen. I used to be a pastor from 88 till 2002. I was a pastor, and I started writing and speaking full time in 2002. And I used to know this pastor in the small town that I lived in outside of Seattle. I haven't spoken to him in 10 years or something like that. But he was on my mind about 2 months ago. Just, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I don't know why. And I have this tendency, if I'm thinking about people, I'll call him up or write him. Well, the problem is, the last I'd heard of him, he was a missionary in Africa. So I just Googled his name. And sure enough, he was back in the States, and he was pastoring a church in Washington State. So I went to his church website, I pulled up his email, and I sent him a thing. And I said, hey, man, I see you're back in the States. You know, it looks like, I don't know why, but you've been on my mind. I don't know why, but I just thought I'd reach out, and looks like your church is going well. And, congratulations, catch me up. And his email came back, and he said, yeah, church is going well, and things are great. He said, unfortunately, and he named his wife, who I also knew, just found out she has 1 year to live. And I wrote back and I said, now I know why you've been on my mind and my heart. I just wrote this book. It's being turned into a movie. Can I send you a copy? I said, I don't want to make anybody feel bad or, anything like that. And he said, well, let me ask her. And he wrote me the next day, and he said she'd love to read it. So there's been some really interesting, neat things that have happened. That's just a most recent one, but no, lots of good things. There's probably lots of people that don't like my books either. In fact, if you're an author, one of the funnest things to do is go to Amazon and read the 1-star reviews. It's actually kind of fun.
It's good. I just have one small request. I don't know if is this book already published?
Yeah, it's called The Four Seasons.
But the movie's not going. So at the end of the movie, can you write in where the billionaire gives half of his money to the Mouthwash Show?
Yeah, maybe not a half. But
we'll settle for a tenth then. I mean,
John, you just announced that Alice Walton is one of your dearest followers. So, I mean, let's start with the low-hanging fruit there.
Well, I'm going to send her a billionaire book, but the ending's got to be right. It's got to be right. So if you're on this show, raise your hand if you're getting paid. There you go. So this is all out of the goodness of our hearts to do this, to stay up on Tuesday night to do this. And somebody asked me the other day, why do you do this? And I'm like, well, the first reason was, in politics, the media covers the mainstream guy. They don't cover anybody. So I wanted to start our own thing. And
I love your format. I love having different voices. I think it's great.
I could say it's like herding turtles on the back of giraffes chasing butterflies. And that's, a lot of what it is. But I mean, people are, Brad came on and he's been very loyal. I think he's our third Democrat. Lucy's been the libertarian the whole time. And Tiffany, she's run for office. So we've had in and out Republicans, but our very first Democrat made it 8 shows and was too fragile to continue.
No.
Now, she was a school teacher for special needs that, had one student.
Well, the libertarians got to be happy. The first ever libertarian ever elected to be the president of the country. And boy, I'll tell you what, have you heard some of his salty language about the leftists? I mean, this guy makes Donald Trump look circumspect, like he's at finishing school. I mean, this guy, he calls him every name in the book. I kind of like it, actually.
I don't know if you guys saw, though. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a libertarian that got voted for mayor of Wichita, Kansas, too.
Oh,
yeah. Well, and the Vermin Supreme guy, we talked about him. He made $7 million doing that. So, hey,
I actually consider myself a Republican with libertarian tendencies. There's a lot of me that just says, look, I don't care. You want to go do that? Go do that. In fact, Tennessee passed an anti-drag show law, and I was one of the guys behind that. I went and got thousands of signatures to get it passed. And I wrote an article. I wrote an article in the Chattanoogan that said how the LGBTQ community can get along with conservatives, or how conservatives and LGBTQ community can get along. The number one thing is just accept one another. You want to look, if you're a dude, you want to dress up like a girl and dance on tables, have at it. Go do it. But no kids under the age of 18 with dollar bills stuffing them in your panties. That's the difference, right? But I'm very much a libertarian. You want to smoke weed? Go smoke weed. You want to dress up like a gal and dance around on tables? Have at it in the privacy of your own home or some club or whatever you want to do. I have a lot of libertarian tendencies. I think government gets into way too much in terms of what people should be allowed to do in the privacy of their own home.
Yep. So Lucy's going to be mad that she missed this show because you are a sort of a kindred spirit, and Slick Witty I think he's pretty much Republican, but I think you may have hit him on the nose. But now, Brad, Brad's a librarian. Hold on a second. I'm gonna intro you here a little bit on this because I see you over there squirming in your seat. So Brad,
I brought up drag shows, and all of a sudden he started.
Yeah, that was the one. I know what's coming, so I'm just gonna set it up for him. I'm gonna set it up. He's gonna knock it down. So he's a librarian up at Monroe Alexandria Library. He's in the youth department, and I just I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have the drag queen story hour. Have you ever had that? Okay, see, Now you go.
No, I haven't. Drag queen story times too. It's a community thing. Like if people come into the library and request things, the library tends to do what the community wants, and that's where it kind of falls into people commenting on things that aren't part of their own community. I guess like some communities are okay with that, but like that's why I'm against kind of like the state laws, because it takes that power away from local governments, I guess. And then what's the point, and how far in reaching is the state government going to be in our lives? Again, it's just more and more government about,
So wait a second. I'm hearing some libertarian tendencies in Brad as well there.
Yeah, I'm pretty
maybe making
government.
a breakthrough here, Chris.
Well, no. And so like, Chris, when you were talking earlier about, I feel like our conversation should be, just moments to kind of like share opinions. I like the fact that even if we can't agree on things, other people might like learn things, from just listening to us.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be like a moment to persuade somebody. But I have a question though. Is there any way to have these kinds of conversations that don't end up mentioning the Bible in any way? Because it's a hard thing to argue, I feel like, because if you try to argue against anything in it, you become sacrilegious, and if you don't honor it with respect, it's almost
Blasphemy.
it's almost like I feel like the conversations are almost over once that happens, because we're no longer talking about the facts in front of us. We're talking about our beliefs, and it's difficult to.
Let me ask you this. I brought up one Bible verse: "Speak the truth in love." Is that a good thing? Speak the truth in love. Should we be truthful, but should we also be loving and kind to the person we're speaking to?
Yeah.
Perfect. We agree on the Bible. Congratulations. Here we go. And to me,
tell them what they want, Bob.
I mean, to me, it's like it's either true or it's not true. And I get that some people don't like the reference to the Bible, but I always say, how would life be really bad if we followed the Bible, right? Like, love your neighbor,
Right?
honor one another. All the stories of love and generosity and forgiveness and kindness and all those kinds of things are the kinds of things that I try to live my life out of. Now, I know there's people that don't believe in the Bible, but they also try to live as kind and loving. And so in terms of bringing up the Bible, I think you can have those conversations about bringing up the Bible, but I also don't think that we need to restrict the Bible from being a source, the same way I might quote Aristotle or de Tocqueville or or People Magazine from last week, or, you know, whoever, right? Because truth is truth, and all truth is God's truth. Because in my opinion, obviously, God is truth.
And
So then, like, Bibles should
that's
not
going over
be.
a line, though.
Yeah, because, like, well, what about if, like, Bibles? So should Bibles be in a children's section and in a library then?
I don't know that children, I think maybe a children's Bible, but I don't know that Bible, you know, the full King James 1611 Bible, you know, necessarily ought to be number one, because there are adult themes in the Bible. Just take a good long look at the Song of Solomon. It's a book on sex, you know, that was written. They use a lot of metaphors, but anybody over the age of, you know, 22 can figure out pretty quickly what it means when he was climbing her mountains, you know. And so
and they weren't Coors Lights.
Right, exactly. So here's where I think the biggest problem is, and why there's hardship in discussion nowadays in politics. I believe that 60 years ago, most people, the vast majority of people, politicians and lay people, they all came from the same worldview. The worldview being essentially this: Judeo-Christian capitalistic worldview, right? That was their worldview, generally speaking. Go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. He was not a Christian. He was a deist, but he came from a Judeo-Christian worldview. He would be shocked if he came out of the grave today and saw what we were looking at. Now, what we argued about 50, 60 years ago was not our worldview, but how do we get to where we want to go? So it was more strategic and tactical and that kind of thing. What we have now, and this is why the battle will never end, is we have a battle not of parties, but of worldviews. We have a traditional Judeo-Christian capitalistic worldview, and you have a lot of people in our country that hold a secular, humanist, socialist, communist worldview. And here's the problem. Both of them view their worldview as a moral imperative. And when you have a moral imperative, it is difficult to concede a point. And that's our problem in American politics today, because it is a moral imperative. And I think what we're looking at, it's not necessarily in the U.S., although it's spilling over into the U.S. Look at what's going on with Israel and Hamas. They both view it as a moral imperative, and never the two shall meet.
Yep. Well, so, you know, what I say, I'm going to get to you, Mark. You know,
and
religion's
I think
a great
that's where
theory.
you're bringing in something that's.
I was going to introduce
here's the
you
thing:
there, Mark.
especially when you're looking Israel and Hamas, the British made a promise to both the Jews, who had been discriminated against for 1,700 years, and the Palestinians who were non-Jewish living there at the time, about 1917 to 1920. As one prime minister said, we sold the same horse twice to both people, because we even turned away Jews who were trying to find refuge here from the Holocaust. So you have all these pressures building, and I don't think that really is saying, well, that's what happens in terms of a religion. They have various worldviews there, especially amongst the Jewish community. Not everybody accepts what Israel is doing. When you talk about, well, what about the moral imperatives in the Bible? You look at the 10 Commandments. Why not post them at school? Well, the first 4 have to do with God and are specific to that religion. I don't want somebody to believe, as a matter of the government posting it up there, that that's what they should believe, because I disagree with you about the overall view being Judeo-Christian and capitalist. My last point on this being, how is this not a socialist country? Socialism is where you got a lot of stuff, and presumably the government or some big body is controlling it, because you're never going to have enough capital to build your own railroad. And would I rather have somebody who is, I was going to say something blank head, who's going to have a 4-letter word beforehand as to what they are? Do I want them controlling it, or at least have some say on it? It might be a half-assed thing from the government on our input, but I sure saw what laissez-faire capitalism had to do in the 1890s and the early 20th century. And so most people can't even define socialism. In fact, there are 70 definitions of it in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So when you get down to saying, well, it should be religion or that, That's a personal decision.
Sure. Well, you know what's interesting is if this ever made it all the way
I'm sorry,
to
I
the
was getting
Supreme,
wound up.
if we ever took this to the Supreme Court, this discussion of whether or not the Ten Commandments should be posted publicly, I would think that all 9 of them must recuse themselves from making a decision. Do you know why?
Do
The
tell.
10 Commandments are in the chambers of the Supreme Court. The original founding fathers, they were people who came from a Judeo-Christian worldview, and they saw no discrepancy whatsoever of having biblical worldview promoted and spoken of and part of the public discussion. As we all know, people say, "Oh, separation of church and state."
That's not true. It's not in the Constitution. God's
It's not in the Constitution
Chris.
at all. I know you're one of the few people
God
that
is not
know that.
mentioned in the Constitution.
But what I'm what I'm saying is the separation
convention. Sorry, go ahead.
the separation of church and state is not mentioned in the Constitution. But everyone says, "Oh, the Constitution says separation of church and state." I actually had a politician once. She was running for re-election. I said, she called me up, and this is when our church was trying to rent one of the public schools. And the law is clear. If you rent to one group, you got to rent to all of them. If you rent to the Boy Scouts, you got to rent to the Ku Klux Klan. If you rent to one group, you got to rent to a church. And it's very clear. It was voted on 9. It's called the Equal Access Law. It was voted 9-0. You, of course, Mark, know that back in the 90s. It was voted 9-0. And it was basically, I think the Ku Klux Klan wanted to rent, and the school district said, no, you can't do it. This gal calls me up. She said, well, you know, the separation of church and state. I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. I want to donate $1,000 to your reelection campaign if you can show me the separation of the church and state in the Constitution. She said, well, I got a Constitution right here. Hold on a minute. Phone sits down. She comes over and she starts thumbing through. I could hear her on her breath. I said, I'll wait. I've got $1,000 burning a hole in my pocket here. Just show me where the separation of church and state. Most people have no clue that what happened was Thomas Jefferson was approached by the Anabaptists, and the Anabaptists wrote Thomas Jefferson a letter and said, hey, we're concerned that we won't be able to be involved politically. I think it was Massachusetts. It was one of the eastern states. Of course, they all were at that point. And we're concerned because there had been laws that said you must be a Congregationalist to be elected. And the Anabaptists were saying, wait a minute, this is Thomas Jefferson writes back and says there must be a separation of church and state. What he intended there was, no, you cannot say that you have to be a particular religion to be elected into office. It had nothing to do with the fact that you can be a Muslim who's elected, you can be an atheist who's elected, you can be a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, a whatever, and be elected. And you are bringing your worldview in that will inform your votes. And hopefully the 250,000 or 400 or 500,000 people who voted you into Congress understand what your worldview is. And by the very fact that they put you in there says that that's how they want you to vote. I'll tell you, I'll use Ilhan Omar as an example.
Anyway, can you use Andre Carson? Because that's our guy here.
Well, I want to use Ilhan Omar. Okay. Ilhan Omar is a woman who's a bigamist. She was married to her brother. She married her brother to skirt the immigration laws to get him to come in. She was married to another man and her brother at the same time in order to get around our immigration laws. And she's been elected over and over again now from a small little group where Obama settled a ton of Somalis. I think he put 80,000 Somalis into that district. And what was the first thing that came out of it? Ilhan Omar. And you know what? I always tell people, Ilhan Omar isn't our problem. It's the 400,000 people that voted her in that are the problem, that they would vote in somebody who skirts our laws, who defies our laws, you know, all these kinds of things. If Donald Trump had been married to 2 women at the same time, do you think that would, if Don Jr. had been snorting coke off of hookers' asses, do you think?
I think they skirt a lot of laws, though.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. I don't think we should use the word skirt anymore. Okay, I'm just going to say that.
Sorry, I got a little riled up.
But Whitty, what do you? I see you snickered on the religion stuff and all that, and you know that is one of the things, and you know it seems like that a lot of people are turned off from religion because some of the religious folks and they're holier than thou, and
Gandhi said that it's not Jesus I have a problem with; it's the Christians, it's his followers. They're the ones that
really.
have a problem
Yeah,
with
those darn Christians. It's like, okay, but Slick, what do you got?
Well, yeah, I think, but one of my favorite quotes in the Bible is Matthew. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. It's kind of what I do, as John knows, through the old Twitter monster over there.
Watch out for the talking donuts.
But, as your designated libertarian panelist for tonight, I would have to disagree with everything that Mark Small is saying right now. Socialism is lame. And if we had it right here, we'd all probably be dead. And Mark just proved my point. Bye-bye.
Well, his internet's sketchy. I mean, he's up there in Broad Ripple, and who knows what happens. They probably shot the telephone pole and all that.
Well, he brought up laissez-faire capitalism, and I would say this is why we have, I believe that we should have free-flowing markets, capitalism, with things like labor laws, antitrust laws, some of those things to keep capitalism in check. But I'll give you an example. When I lived in Washington State, my best friend ran for governor twice, and then I ended up running for the U.S. Senate in 2010 during the primary. And the problem is they say, well, the free market doesn't work in healthcare. And I say, really? Do you think we have free market healthcare here in Washington State? And there's, oh, yeah, we have free market healthcare in Washington. No, we don't. We had 3 providers of healthcare in Washington State. And we had 39 mandates. So if you never went to the chiropractor, you were still paying for chiropractor insurance. If you never went to the massage therapist, you still paid for massage therapy coverage in your insurance. If you were a 65-year-old never married man, you were still paying for maternity coverage.
Apparently you have not been paying attention to the local thing, because men can get pregnant.
Now of course we know that we were all wrong.
Wrong.
But the point is that we have not had free markets for a very, very, very long time.
It's anybody want to comment about the free market, because it ain't so free?
Health insurance is expensive. Actually, to go back to your point about the health insurance too, I remember everybody keeps asking me if I'm going to be voting for 45 or not. And I said, yeah, I'm voting for 2 Dons next year, Rainwater and Trump. And I'll tell you why I'm voting for Trump. Back in 2017, when I was having to pay $300 a month for health insurance, I was getting fined every year for not having it. So once he came in there, it got repealed. Now I'm not getting fined by the federal government anymore for not having health insurance. So saving me money. And, everybody else's opinion on that is.
Well, you know what I use? I use health sharing. Have you heard of these health sharing programs? MetaShare is probably the biggest one, most well-known one. We at the Red Referral Network, we're going to be launching our own. We've partnered with a great group. I started this sharing program. It was a carve out in Obamacare, and I pay $220 a month for the most Cadillac. It's not insurance, but it's sharing, right? So if I have a bill, I send it in and they send me the money. And we all dump money into the pot every month, and then they pay it out. My deductible is $500 per incident. But an incident is any particular problem with my body in the course of 90 days. So if I have a shoulder problem and I go in and I have to pay the doctor's visit, then I get x-rays, then he says, oh, you need surgery, and then you need physical therapy. For 90 days, they pay for everything except my $500, right? And so here's what I learned about insurance. I never used this for 3 years. I started in January 2020. Well, earlier this year, I needed an MRI. And it's the first time I've actually used my sharing. So I went in and they said, what insurance will you be using? And I said, well, I'm not going to be using insurance. I'm self-pay. That's what they call them, self-pay. And then I turn in an itemized thing to my health sharing, and they send me the money minus $500. And she said, oh, okay, well, then it's a lot cheaper then. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, with insurance, the MRI is $5,000. With self-pay, it's $2,500. I mean, just step back for a moment and realize how moronic that is. Oh, somebody else is going to pay? We're going to double the price. Oh, you're going to pay? It's only $2,500. That's one of the problems with our health insurance. And
most of the doctors have to have a full-time staff member just to deal with the insurance. So you got to get a good one, because you pay somebody $30, they're going to screw up your insurance. So it ain't easy. And and now we have HRs with a lot of business. I don't know. human resources, and they take care of a lot of that stuff. I mean, back in the 90s, it was unheard of to have a human resource person, really. But with all the different regulations and rules and insurance and things, you know, you can get in trouble at work. Apparently, I've never been in trouble at work, so I don't know. I've never been in HR, but I mean, my wife was in HR for a lot of years, and I get in trouble with her, so I guess that counts by proxy. But yeah, it seems like there is a lot of fees in the insurance part of things, and you know, insurance was a co-op. It was designed to be a co-op. They would invest that money. They would take that money and offset some of your costs. Well, now it's it's a profit thing. Now they invest that money and they keep it, and then they charge you more of a premium to fill up the, you know, to make
one of my
thing
first
go.
business mentors. I lived in northern New Jersey, and one of my first business mentors was the #2 guy at Prudential Insurance. I went down to his office once. His office was like 6,000 square feet. He had a 32-person like mahogany conference table in his office. And he said to me, he said, Chris, you just have to realize this about insurance. Go to any downtown in any city, and the tallest buildings in that city are usually insurance buildings. Don't let anybody tell you that the insurance companies aren't making money. And it's true.
Well, and they used to say that the most important building in the city, the tallest one is that, and it used to be the church. Now you go look, and it's what you said. It's either that type of thing or something else. You'd hardly see a cross sticking up high enough to see.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're getting long in the tooth here now, Chris. I don't think I warned you about the conspiracy theory, but I imagine you probably have something of that nature, don't you? As far as a conspiracy theory you can throw together or whatever. And this is going to be interesting because
you haven't told me anything about it. So let me know what I'm going to.
Okay, so what we do is I play this little intro here, and we put on tinfoil hats. Now you're not required to have such a thing, and then we just throw out these theories, and I'll go ahead and put the banner up now so that if anybody sees it, they'll know that it's just for entertainment purposes only. Only Lucy's have come true so far. About all of ours have, pretty much. So it could be anything from the fake lunar landing to something about Bill Gates, or just anything you want to make up. I usually make up something during the show because I don't really have one right now, but I'm thinking I think I started to formulate something here. So
are you asking me to tell you a conspiracy theory that I believe in?
Well, it doesn't matter. It could be true or Lucy calls it conspirafact. So it could be, it could be anything, but we all have one. And you won't be on the hot seat.
The problem with conservatives,
Chris might want to sit back and watch a couple of people give theirs.
Yeah, the problem with conspiracy theories is, for conservatives anyway, is that they're initially conspiracy theories, and 6 months later they're fact.
Oh, yeah, you're going to fit right in on this. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and you won't be on the hot seat anymore. That's the good news. But the bad news is we're going to have funny hats on here directly. Okay. So this gives you a chance to get it. So here you go.
Hey, y'all, it's time for the conspiracy theory, so you better get your tinfoil hat out, and let's see what's going on this week.
Yeah, I always like to spring that on the guests, and see, this is what you get when you get panelists at 4:30 on the day of the show. They don't even have time to go out and get any foil, and Brad refuses.
I wish you'd have told me. I would have made a little.
I know.
Well, phone or something.
I had my hands full today with things, so it was a fun day of.
Well, you know what?
Lucky to have a show.
Hold on, real quick.
Okay. Well, we'll see it. So, Mark, is that a baseball hat? What do you got there backwards? So you got the rally cap on. There we go. Oh, look, there's a little.
You know who signed it? The Nuge. It's my AR-15.
Oh, really?
That Nugent subscription or signature there. The Nuge, baby.
Yeah, that guy's personally. Yeah, it's a cat scratch fever going there. Well, actually, Brad's got cats and Mark's got some cats. So really, if you're a left-leaning person, you're a cat person.
If you're right, you have dogs. Yeah, I don't want to have the corporate logo on or anything.
Yeah, you don't want to be advertising for anybody. That's true. So this will be interesting and not on conspiracy theories. I think I'm going to start first because I'll forget mine. And it has to do with getting older. I mean, we were talking about, this is going back to the caveman and Neanderthal times when, we had to go out and club women over the head and drag them back and everything. Well, once you got them back to the cave, as you got older with this, living in this cave with the woman, we lost Mark again. He's like the Irish setter, just keeps running across the thing till we lose him. So, you're in the cave with this woman, and, as you get older, and I know, I'm getting older, my hearing's going a little bit. I can't see very good. You know, we were hunter gatherers back in the day. We would go out and we'd have to get our food and all that. But when you get older, you can't go as fast and you can't catch the best, you know, the prime food. So that's why your eyes go bad, is because you got to eat stuff that if you see it, you may not, you know, want to eat it. So your eyes are going bad. And then the reason your hearing starts going is because you got to live in the cave with the woman. And you've heard that all these years, go out and get us some food, go do this, go do that, arrange the rocks in the cave or whatever. So your ears go out. So my conspiracy is the reason older men start losing their hearing and you can't see very well is because way back when we were hunters and gatherers, that we needed to have that those senses to be able to keep our sanity. So that, I know that's pretty bad conspiracy theory, but
follow-up question, John, are you married?
Yeah, I'm married. Yeah, I'm married. Yeah, I know a lot of people ask that.
Follow-up question, are you happily married?
Well, you could ask her that, but yeah, I think she's pretty good. She's my current wife, and you know, she's made it 9 years. So I've
started calling my wife my ex-girlfriend. She thinks that's funny. I haven't introduced her yet to anybody as my ex-girlfriend.
So when I do weddings, sometimes if the couple's friendly, I will say, "This is a funeral. This is the death of being single."
Right.
So. So that's just a very bad example of a conspiracy. But I think if people think about that tomorrow, when you get older, you start losing your hearing, you're thinking, there's something to that. So anyway, who wants to go next? Don't make our guest go, because I think he's already got this figured out. Mark Small, you got anything?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay, Brad, go.
All right. So, I run one of the library programs I do is it's a conspiracy crew event for adults on Monday night. Like it's usually like the last Monday of the month. And this time we decided to talk about Dollar Generals and how they're popping up everywhere. And just the more that I went down that rabbit hole of Dollar Generals, it was insane. Like, you know, they only have like 2 employees per store kind of a thing. Every store is the same with all the stuff stocked in the aisles. There's never anybody at the checkout. The self-checkout's always broken. And so, you know, we had a great discussion. The weirdest part to me, though, is that when I was home for lunch yesterday, I was watching YouTube, and John Oliver's show last week tonight did a special about dollar stores and like their impact on the economy and how like detrimental they are to lower income communities and things like that. And so it was just a weird, like, whoa, everyone's talking about this at the same time, you know, kind of a thing. So so that was my conspiracy crew thing. My conspiracy about Hamilton East is that Tiffany resigned. Micah is going to resign as soon as somebody makes fun of him, and he has to resign because of his lieutenant governor campaign. But they're all just cowards. They started a dumpster fire at that library, and now they're all leaving.
Well,
they're all
actually,
leaving.
Tiffany got voted out. So because they had a vote and they put other people on, and they don't have a majority anymore.
Well, no, like she's still on the board.
Well, on the board, but she got voted out as president.
She's not president. Well, yeah. But they voted her out of being board president after she resigned.
It's a formality, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Get out and stay out.
It was like, well, okay, we needed to do business, and we can't have you, in
our business. I got you. That. So, all right, yeah. Slick, what do you got? You got something on? I hope
I got a little something.
Okay, good.
So just the other day, Indianapolis went over 200 homicides for the year. And I think that's 4 or 5 years in a row now.
At least
4 years.
4.
So my conspiracy theory is that the city wants there to be more crime, murder, and violence so they can put more cameras on the street. Just the other week, the city council approved another couple $100,000 for cameras in park trails. So this is going to be the beginning of the social credit score in Indy, and this will just be a pilot program.
Okay, let's go streaking. Maybe not. Everybody's streaking down to the quad or the Monon Trail. So that's by Mark Small's house. Mark,
I think you can actually streak though. You just have to pay a clothing credit. It's sort of like the climate change thing.
Yeah.
You have to buy carbon credits. So
Yeah,
you
that's
can walk
only
around
stuff.
naked as long as you pay a clothing credit.
Yeah.
Take my money.
Okay, Mark, what do you got to say about that? You live up by the Monon Trail. That's a trail here it's very popular to go on.
I got a different conspiracy. So like this government thing got together and they figured a way to get better than binary communication of signals and information processing unit. And they decided to put it on a thing outside of the atmosphere where it could kind of develop on its own. And the way that it did it, it can operate on 4 or 5 codes of information simultaneously. It's called the Bose-Einstein condensation. Nobody's talking about it. It was achieved in '96 in Colorado for a nanosecond. They maintained it for 5 minutes 2 years ago on the International Space Station, and NASA just tried to shut it down. That is quantum. It's no longer quantum physics. It's quantum mechanics. And drones are operating on their own out in the battlefield.
Wow, that's how they funded it, is those new NASA shirts the kids are wearing.
And
love those
Hal
things.
is in charge.
Yeah,
I had one of those.
A NASA shirt?
That
Yeah,
might-
I knew you did.
That might be true,
Only
John,
one?
but I
Only
can't
one.
open
Okay.
those
Yeah,
Bob
just one.
Bagels.
Yeah, do you
I'm
wear it to the
sorry.
Fish concert?
Yeah,
Do you,
that's exactly. Yeah, that's a concert. tee.
Hey, it's just predictable. I mean, it's just so. Chris, Brad he missed a show recently because he followed Fish for how many days? The band.
It was 5 shows, so they played 3
One
nights
was
in Nashville.
Nashville. Yeah, Nashville.
Yeah,
So he was
yeah,
down
that
in-
was a great time. 3 nights in Nashville and then 2 nights in Dayton, and yeah, they were great. Great
If you
shows.
stuck a gun to my head and said, name a Fish song, or I'm pulling the trigger, I'm like, just pull the trigger. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, dude, you'll still have a great time. No, and that's the thing. We don't go for like, you don't because you don't care.
I
like,
went
what
to see the
like,
Dead.
like,
I went to see the
oh,
Grateful Dead, man, with Jerry.
The number
Oh,
one
yeah.
shirt that I get complimented on is a Red Hot Chili Peppers shirt. And people are like, I love that shirt. And I'm like, yeah, if I had to name a single song of theirs, or
give it away now. Give it away now. Come on.
I couldn't
never
tell
seen
you.
like Flea jumping around naked playing his bass.
Couldn't tell you. I also have a Sublime shirt that I get a lot of comments on, and I know even less of their songs.
Not naked. He's wearing a sock.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. All right. So, Chris, do you have it now? You say you're down in Chattanooga, is that right?
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
You know where Saudi Daisy is? You know where Saudi?
I know where it is. Yeah, I got to tell you,
My,
Slick Witty. They're doing one of their 15-minute cities here. They're doing the what do they call them? The
Soda Sopa.
Not clean cities, not clear cities. What do they call it? Smart cities. And I know a lot of my friends are very concerned. The number one thing I'm concerned about is the cameras, as you mentioned. But again, I think the cameras are fine as long as they're not data mined and as long as they're not stored. The average murder is solved in less than 72 hours. If somebody gets shot in downtown Chad, it would be great to have a camera there to pick them out. I just don't want license plates stored and traffic analyzed as when individuals.
It'll happen though. Like
It already is
Oh,
happening.
of course it'll happen. It always happens. That's the whole Patriot Act was sold to us as a thing of oh no, it'll keep us from terrorists.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget we're in conspiracy mode. Like I'm arguing against
Yeah.
people.
No, this is.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't believe in any of the sort of standard conspiracies like the Earth is flat or the moon landing was faked. Most of the conspiracies I believe in are the things that the Democrats tell me are conspiracies, like that Joe Biden's not a worldwide crime figure, that January 6th wasn't a Fedsurrection, and frankly, gosh, have you guys seen the 40,000 hours they've released? My favorite is the one where the 2 cops bring the protester around the corner. You seen this one? Bring him around
John,
the corner.
please
and
do a
they
January
start
6th.
looking around going, all right. And he bends over. They let him out of the handcuffs and he fist bumps one of the cops and goes, they're like, we did it, man. We faked it. So
Well,
those are the conspiracy theories that I believe in, the ones that actually are now being proven to be true. So.
Well, we were going to have Dr. Stock on to fill in until we, filled in with Slick there, and he's on one of the ones that's going around. He's the one that's saying, and it was peaceful until they started firing the tear gas and all the stuff in there.
That is on video. I've seen it. They're all just standing in a big group. There's a guy that took a paintball. It's stuck in between his cheek. It pierced his cheek. They were all just standing around. These guys, and then you got the guy who, you got, of course, the Epps guy. But now there's another one they caught. He had a gun on him. They videotaped him, and a far left group was trying to go after all the people who were there. And they saw this guy with a gun. His shirt popped up, and they could see the gun come out. So they did the analyzing his face. They found out who this guy was. And lo and behold, he was taken off the most wanted list, and then nothing ever happened to him. This group tracked him down, a far left group tracked him down because they wanted him to go to prison. Guess what they found out? He was a Fed. The gun that he was, they did an analysis of the gun coming out of his waistband. He was a Fed. It was a federally issued weapon. And he was there wearing his Make America Great hat, and all this kind of stuff. So I can't wait for 5 years from now. 5 years from now, all this is going to be justified. It's going to be.
So I'm going to ask Mark a question as a lawyer of the group. Do you think this is going to overturn some of these convictions that they have?
Wait, can you guys hear me? Because my text seems messed up.
No, your text's not good. It's been sporadic at best. So, yeah,
but we can.
I doubt it because God told Mike, so he's stuck with it.
So Chris, that knew Micah Beckwith is.
I'm not a fan of Michael Beckwith.
Micah said it.
I'm not a fan of Michael Beckwith.
That's Rit.
Nah, I'm not a fan of Michael Beckwith.
Do you know Micah Beckwith?
Yeah, he's a New Ager guy. He's an African American guy.
No. That's you're thinking, yeah, that's going to be good for our show.
This is great in conspiracy theory.
Oh man,
no, wrong one.
Michael's black.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. No. Okay, I'm thinking when you started talking about God, there is a guy. No, there is a guy named Michael Beckwith, and he's like a New Age preacher from California. So when you started saying God told him, I'm like, that's where my brain went.
You're halfway there.
Yeah, you're halfway there. It's the wrong color and wrong state, but other than that, it's pretty similar. But no, Micah is he's a preacher that is outspoken in politics.
Micah Beckwith.
Yeah, tomorrow is the 60th anniversary of the Zapruder's film of the assassination. That started all the conspiracies.
Wow.
Yes, it did. That's the mother.
One of my favorite lines in a movie is Shooter. Do you remember the movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg? And he goes out and he visits this old guy in a cabin somewhere. And apparently that old guy is actually a rock star from like the 60s. I can't remember who he is, but he's an actor now. And they go in there and he starts talking about the Kennedy assassination. And the old man says, well, they killed the guys right after the thing was done and they buried them in the desert. And Mark Wahlberg says, his character says, well, how do you know that? And he says, hell, I still got the shovel. It's one of my favorite lines in a movie. Hell, I still got the shovel.
Yeah, it's like conspiracy facts. We just don't know. It's Mandrake. It's fluoridation.
Can I say something about conspiracy? Because I have a theory about conspiracy. I love words. I'm a speaker. I've given 2,500 speeches, written 25 books. I love words, and I love breaking them down. So take the word conspiracy. Con is a prefix that means with. And the way I always remember that is chili con carne, means chili with meat, right? So con, anytime you see the word con, like confidence means with faith. Fide is the old Latin term for faith. So confidence means with faith. Conspiracy, the spire, S-P-I-R-E, means breath. That's why when somebody dies, they expire. They're out of breath. X means out of breath. Conspiracy means with breath. So think about this for a minute. Think about people who are talking with breath. What are they doing? They're whispering. They're saying,
oh, it's conspiracy.
We should go do this. Now, here's my thoughts on conspiracy. Everybody's, that's a conspiracy theory. And I say, have you ever read a story similar to this, that some woman living in a trailer park, her and her boyfriend conspired to kill her husband for $5,000 worth of life insurance. I think we've all seen that on 2020 or Dateline NBC.
Isn't that Britney Spears?
It's all over the place. How is it that we can believe that a woman living in a trailer park can conspire with her boyfriend to kill her husband for $5,000 worth of life insurance, but by golly, 2 senators couldn't go into a back room and try to figure out how to control $1.7 trillion? Come on.
That'd be a good forensic foreplay.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. I like the comedian. There's a comedian reel going out now, and you've probably seen him. He's a comedian. Mark, I know you're a comedian. He says, I get it. You don't believe in all the conspiracy theories. I get it. That's no problem. But come on. You don't believe in any conspiracy theories? Like, you think the government's got it down 100% all the time, doing what's right? It's the people who don't believe in a conspiracy theory that I think have their heads buried in the ground because they obviously don't understand human nature.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy theory is a great theory till you add people. So then it gets a little foggy. Well, this has been a very interesting evening. One, it's like all male review here, and nobody got in a big fight. That's good.
Let's go.
I've enjoyed it. This has been one of my most enjoyable experiences on podcasts, and I've done 1,000 of them. And I like the different varying opinions, and it's fantastic. And frankly, we need more of this.
We do have a lot of guests that do enjoy being on our show, and it's this that just sort of made this up. We wanted to make everyone the best they can be, and we want to try to appreciate everybody's opinion. And so far, we've been able to do that, but it's been bumpy.
You're making podcasting great again. Sounds like.
Yeah. Megan, I don't know what that acronym is, but
MPGA.
Puddle. It's Puddle. It's like that. So, all right. Well, hey, Chris, this has been great. And if you would like to go back on this, we're on Facebook. You can't do it on Twitter, but YouTube, you can add in your links for when you're talking about your book. I don't get paid enough to be adding your links in for you. Okay. You got to do that yourself. This is self-service podcast. It's not, there's no green M&Ms.
I'll have my people get a hold of your people, John.
Yeah. Try that. So I think my people talked a little bit earlier about, Lisa, that this was one of Lisa's comments here. Let's see.
I think she said, I love my Johnny.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. We've been married 62 years, just not to each other. So
I knew a professional speaker who used to stand up and he'd say, my wife and I've been married 57 years. Well, you know what an audience does when you say that. They all say, oh, like this. And he'd say, stop, stop, stop. And the audience would stop and he'd say, only 42 of them were any good.
Yeah. Well, then trying to figure out which 15 weren't. So that's the rub on it. So, all right, well, let me take off the banner here so we can bid everybody farewell. And then, Chris, we usually stick around after I close it up.
All right.
I'm going to edit this thing tonight for the TV, so we won't be long afterwards. But, hey, thanks, viewers, for watching tonight. I think this has been a fun show. We love it when the guests love it. Hey, don't be a stranger, Chris. If you got when that movie comes out, hit us up. We want free tickets. We want backstage passes. We want everything. We want autographed rifle hats, all the stuff that you get with all that. So please keep
green M&Ms. No green M&Ms.
Green M&Ms too. We're a picky bunch over here. So all right, hey everybody, that's great. And here you go. We're closing it out. Everybody, peace out. Peace out. There you go.
Yeah.